Hi guys, and welcome to Total Technik. Today we're working on the Audi 3-litre V6 TFSI engine. This particular car is an Audi Q7, and we're going to be doing a full oil change and filter change. So what we'll be covering in this video is a full oil change, including a new oil filter. We've also got a new sump plug and sump plug washer there as well, and in addition to that we're also going to be showing you how to replace the air filter, and for good measure we're also going to be replacing your cabin filter or your pollen filter as well. So we've got quite a lot to get stuck into, so let's begin. So the first thing we need to do is get the engine warmed up, and more specifically to get that oil warmed up. You always want to drain the oil when it's warm. You get a much better drain than you ever would on a cold engine. So what you want to do is either take the car for a quick 10-minute drive around the block, or just leave it idling for 15 minutes or so until it reaches the full operating temperature on your gauge on the dashboard, and then we'll be ready to start the drain process. So now you're going to have to get access to your oil drain plug, your sump plug, just in here. To do this you may need to, if you've got air suspension on your car, you can raise the air suspension to its maximum setting and see if you've got enough space to get underneath comfortably, or alternatively of course you're going to have to jack the car up. So if your car does have the air suspension, what you need to do is go into the onboard computer and find the option for the jacking mode or jack mode and enable that, and what that will do is it will shut off the air suspension, so as you lift the car it won't constantly be trying to adjust its level. So make sure you do that if you have air suspension. Then of course you need to drop down. There's a plastic tray under here, and it just has screws around the outside of it. You need to undo those screws and drop that down. I've already filmed a video on that, it's dead simple, but if you do need any help we'll have a link for you in the descriptive text below. And with that removed we can get access to our sump. As we can see in our particular instance on this car, we have an oil leak that appears to be coming from, I would say, the washer on the sump plug just there. It doesn't appear to be dripping down from anywhere that's higher than that. So this is a good example of why it's always a good idea to replace the washer. I'm going to be quite keen to get that out and find out that's either not torqued up to a spec or the washer's gone bad, so I'm quite keen to get that out and have a look at it. That's a good example of why you should always change the sump plug washer. So make sure you've got your drain pan ready to collect your oil. It's going to be quite messy because, as you can see, it's going to drop down right onto your subframe here, and it's kind of going to go off in various directions. A little bit messy design, but now what we need to do is attack the actual sump plug. So this is a hex size 6. Yeah, that wasn't in very tight. So now we're just allowing the oil to continue to drain through. If you had to jack your car up at the front, now would be a good time to level it back off, so you get a nice even drain. I mean, that's the oil plug is kind of towards the rear of the engine anyway, so it might benefit the drain, but they're designed to be drained with the engine flat. So if you have got it jacked up, lower it back down so we get a nice even drain. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to release the pressure on the oil cap for your oil filter there, and what that will allow to do, it will allow air to enter from the top, and it will help the rest of that oil fall back down through the system. And just to keep things tidy, you might want to get a bit of your blue paper, just put it in under the front edge, just down in there. Any drips, because it's on such an angle, will drip down towards the front edge. Now the cap on this, you're going to need a dedicated oil wrench tool, so that's a size 36, or you're going to have access to a very big socket like we have this one here. So it's a size 36 that actually fits on there. And all you're looking to do initially is just to break the seal, just to let the air in to help with the drain. You're not actually looking to remove the air filter at this stage. So just get it to a point where you can feel that it's completely loose, and that will help with the drain. I'm just going to leave it at that point for the time being. So you want to leave that a good kind of 10 to 15 minutes until the drains slow down to a kind of a slow drip. So in the meantime, keep yourself active. What you can do is get stuck into the air filter. So that's what we're going to do next. So we need to do a little bit of disassembly to the airbox to actually be able to change the filter. One very important factor on these, there are a couple of variations depending on whether you have air suspension or not. This particular vehicle does not have the air suspension, but I'll show you what the difference is between the two. So obviously if you have got air suspension, this is a very important step. So we need to get in and have a look at the rear of the airbox. So this is where the metal hose is, and this is where your coil packs are. And if you look down in this area, down on here, you can see coming out the back here, you've got this this hose actually coming out the back of the airbox itself, just here. And you can see we don't have the air suspension, and so ours has just got like a little cap stuck in the end of it. If you do have air suspension, on the end of this you will actually have a line coming off of this, and that was what needs to be removed. And the way that it's removed, the very end part of it, not the end that's closest to the airbox, the opposite end of it, it has like a little ring, and you have to pull that back and then slide the whole thing off. Unfortunately I can't demonstrate it for you, but it's fairly kind of self-evident once you have a look at it. Have a look at that fixing and you'll see it's got like a little ring, and you have to slide that ring back, and then when that ring's back it will release the little teeth that are in there, and then you should be able to give it a bit of a wiggle and slide back, and that should pop off. So that's how you release that if you have it. So we have this coolant line, comes in across the top here. You can see it coming off the coolant reservoir right here, and just on the front here it's got like a little rubber tab, just pulls out like that. So we're going to pull that out because we're going to need to manipulate that to give ourselves a bit of space. Next up, right on the front of the airbox, if you look down in here, you've actually got an air hose that comes into it, down at the bottom, just in here. So that's what we need to disconnect next. So the way it works is it's got these little squeeze parts on the side. You have to squeeze it in from both sides, and what that will do, it's kind of oval shaped, and it will release this part here. So you've got to squeeze it in quite tight and give it a bit of a wobble, and that should just pop off. So next up we need to attack this hose clip just here. And then we want to disconnect the hose from the airbox just here, so give it a bit of a wobble. Lift it up a little bit, and we might have to manipulate that as we go a little bit, but that must be disconnected. So we have these two clips just at the top, so we get those released. You want to lift the whole unit forward, try and leave the air filter behind if you can, and then lift him up. It's got like a little tabs that go into little holes at the very bottom. That's going to give us the access we need. So just carefully pull the air filter forward. And lift it from the car. It's always a good idea to take a look inside the airbox housing and see if you've got any kind of dirt or debris, sand, leaves. I've actually got some old rotten, it's just disintegrating, some old rotten bits of foam, I think, from the insert that was attached there. But if you have anything in there, now's a good time. Get the vacuum cleaner in there and get it cleaned out. So now take your new air filter. Always try and buy yourself the best possible quality air filter that you can. The quality varies a lot these days. You've got a lot of unbranded stuff coming in from China. You're better off to spend a little bit more and get yourself a decent branded one. Now this particular one is made by Wix. We'll put the part number on the screen for you. You can get this one on Amazon. I will add a link for you in the descriptive text below, but just buy the best one that you can afford in your budget. So just place the air filter into situ, and you want to make sure that all of the edges are sitting exactly where they should. That one wasn't. So there shouldn't be any gaps, there shouldn't be anything sticking out. It should be nice and flush all the way around the edges, including the bottom. So just a reminder, you have these little tabs across the end of the air filter just here. Those actually fit into those 3 sets of slots. You can see down just past the edge of the air filter there. So just a quick note for you, when you're placing this down, what you want to try and do is get as extreme an angle as possible. If you put it in quite shallow, what you'll end up doing, if you imagine this was the bottom, you'll just end up pushing this onto this rubber kind of seal, and you'll end up splitting this rubber seal or damaging it. And sometimes if you do that, you can kind of actually see it just bulging out at the bottom there past the plastic. So what you're going to try and do is get as big an angle as you can so that you can miss the bottom edge and then get it locked in and then bring it back straight. Obviously I'm exaggerating, we're never going to get that angle because the engine's in the way, but try and get it as far that way as you can. Make sure it's seated in nice at the bottom before you close it up. As you can see, that rubber at the bottom is actually sat in. If you look in that corner, you can kind of get an idea that that rubber is sat in exactly where it's meant to, if that makes any sense. So just give that a bit of a wobble, make sure you're happy with it before you start to close that up. One thing to be wary of just on the back corner, if you're feeling it being tight, I don't know whether you can see that down in this gap here, you've got these little hoses down in there, and sometimes they can get stuck in there, so I'm going to reach in, make sure that they're pulled out of the way, and that should hopefully help me close this gap up. So just be wary of those. And once you've got it in the right place, you see it shouldn't need, the clips aren't on, and you see it doesn't really need much to close it up. That's just the rubber compressing. If you're like having to pull it and try and clip this on, then you've caught a part of the edge somewhere. So it should be nice and easy like that. Snap it on, same. So that's the air filter done. So now we need to pop back together these various elements that we removed. Starting with the large air hose here. And make sure it seats on the bottom correctly. When you're doing it, you have to do it by feel, because that's where it's most likely to catch. So make sure you haven't got a fold on the underside, and it feels good all the way around before you do the clip back up. You see on this one, I think this is looks to be non-genuine to me. They've kind of put 2 of these together to kind of bodge this job in the past. I mean, it works, there's nothing wrong with it, but obviously you'll likely only have 1 screw on your clip. And again, have a feel around, make sure your hose clip is actually seated correctly in this kind of groove. It should sit obviously in this little groove in there. So have a feel around, make sure you've not kind of caught any of that housing, make sure you're happy. Then you want to do it up fairly tight, and it's good to go. Little air hose here on the front, just pop that back in, make sure it clicks, and it's on nice and tight. And remember this little rubber tab on your coolant line there, pop that back in. And then finally, if you do have the air suspension, remember that you need to pop your little push-on clip, force that back on to the little plastic hose on the rear of the housing. So next we need to remove the old oil filter. So we're going to take the cap and pull the whole of the housing out. There's our new filter, K&N. You always want to double check that you've got the new gasket in there. There we go. So just grab this, grab the whole thing and pull it downwards. Releases like so. Okay, so if you look at the new gasket, see it's got a little tab on it just there. If you look down inside here, just at the bottom, just down there, hopefully you can see they've got the tab there. So just going to grab some long nose pliers, and that'll allow us to remove that one. So next, if you have a look at the oil filter housing where we just removed the oil filter from, you can see, if you look in the mirror there, it's actually got a rubber gasket around the outer edge there as well. So just very carefully, you can sometimes do it with your finger, or get your hook tool in behind it, and just remove that gasket. So grab some of your fresh oil. That's the oil that we're going to be doing the top up with. Just put a tiniest little drop in the cap. I'm going to take the first of our brand new gaskets. This is the one for the housing, and just going to take a little bit of this oil and make sure we get this coated completely with a nice little thin layer of oil. The reason being is obviously it helps with the lubrication when you're screwing it all back together. It enables the parts to slide over one another easier, but also it's much better to have a damp, a wet seal rather than a bone dry seal, especially when it comes to rubber gaskets. So now you just want to carefully work this gasket around the outer edge. Like so, and then you just want to get your, once that's in there, you're going to get your mirror tool and just go around the outside and make sure it's properly seated within the groove. So there you go, you can see the groove that it should be in. So you just want to go all the way around the edge and check it for yourself, make sure you're 100% happy with everything that you're able to see. Some of it you can see, some of it you'll need the tool for. So now I'm going to do exactly the same thing with your second gasket. Remember that this tab is at the top for removal for next time. So a nice layer of oil inside and outside. And then just drop that down into the slot. Remember your tab must be facing upwards to help you get it out again at a later date. I'm just going to push that down into the groove just in there. So take quickly your old oil filter quickly, and just to see if it was sided, which is not, it's identical on both ends, there's no markings for top or bottom. So likewise on our new one, identical on both sides. So we can go ahead and snap that into place. And the way that it works, there's like little plastic tabs in the bottom that are actually going to clip over the lip just in here. So push this down. Lock that in. Now just carefully insert the air filter back in. Be careful with these hoses, and start to tighten it back into place. And always a good place to check for the factory specified torque is on the cap itself. You can see here 25.5 Newton meters. As you're tightening this up, just make sure it feels like it's going on correctly. Nice and smooth, you shouldn't feel any resistance until you get to the end. That means the gaskets would have seated correctly. So now I've got to go back underneath the car and prepare it ready to be refilled. Obviously before we can put any oil in the system, we need to get our drain plug back in place. So there we go, down to a very, very slow drip, so virtually everything is now out. So it's time to put the new sump plug in. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a clean on here. I'm not going to worry about cleaning all of the subframe just yet. I can do that in a second once I've got the new plug in. So we have here a brand new washer and also a brand new plug. The old plug was okay, could have been used, but obviously there was an issue with the washer. As you can see, this is the crush type of washer. And so absolutely this should be changed with every oil change. So now we're going to grab our torque wrench and do that up to the factory spec, which is 30 Newton meters. I'm just going to give it a bit of a clean up with some degreaser, just so we can check it for leaks. So we're going to get rid of all the old drips and rubbish. So if should it leak, I'll be able to spot it easily and immediately, so I can rectify it. And then whilst we're here, we're also going to clean up all these drips. When this is done in an Audi workshop, they actually have a specialist tool. It's like a little, trough, and they actually stick that up next to this and then run it out the front here into the pan. So this way is a little bit more messy, but if you haven't got the tool, it only takes 3 or 4 minutes to get it tidied back up. So we're ready to start the fill process. So just remove your oil fill cap, put that safely to one side. And whilst I'm there, I can remove my piece of paper that I put under the oil housing. As you can see, it caught a few drips as it came out. So next, grab yourself a suitable size funnel and just get that set up, ready to pour. So this is the correct spec oil for this particular vehicle, 5W40, and it should take 6.95 litres there or thereabouts. So that's what we're going to do, is going to go ahead and get all of these 5 litres in there straight away, and then what we'll do is, as we start to get nearer to the point where we think it's going to be full, the final fine-tuning of the oil level actually has to be done with the engine warmed up. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this 5 litres in. Just be careful with your pour rate. You don't want to pour it too quickly because it might overflow down at the bottom there. You've got to kind of seat down. So just in your own time, just keep this going. Like I said, we're going to put all of this 5 litres straight in. So we now have 5 litres in. We're going to go ahead and put another 1.5 litres in, take it up to within half a litre of our final fill point. To help you do this, most oil containers have a little scale on the back. So you can actually kind of calculate how much oil you've put in. So you see it starts here with full is 5, 4.5, 4, this is in litres, 3.5. So I'm going to go ahead and put in another 1.5 litres, and that'll take us to 6.5 in total in the engine. Let's take your funnel out, put that to one side, and put your oil cap back in. So working as per the Audi workshop manual for this car, the oil temperature should be red when the engine is around 60 degrees, which isn't fully warmed up. Full operating temperature on the middle of the gauge is actually 90, as you'll see if you look in your dashboard. But we're looking to do it at 60, so it's a kind of a warm engine, halfway between cold and hot. So you want to run your engine for a few minutes now, just get that oil circulating around the system, get all of the filter and everything back into operation, get all that filled back up with oil, and then once it's warm we can start taking the measurement off the dipstick and then adjust as necessary. So there you go, you can see the temperature just starting to rise now. It's just gone above 50. And we're looking to get it up to at least 60. So to give you an idea of where that would be, we're almost there, we're halfway there. You've got 50 marked and you've got 90 marked, so halfway between those two would be 70. So halfway between that 70, which is unmarked, and 50 is going to be your 60. So yeah, we're approaching kind of halfway. We need to be halfway between those two bottom marks just to get it up to 60 so the engine's reasonably warm. So we've now got the engine nice and warm. We've just gone over the 60 degree mark on the gauge on the dashboard. So now you shut the engine off as we just have, and we're going to leave it now for 2 to 3 minutes just to let all the oil that's in that system drain back down into the sump so we can get an accurate reading on the dipstick. So it's been about 3 minutes since we shut the engine off, so now we can have a look at the oil level. We're expecting to be low at this stage, so we'll have a quick look. Yep, so I don't know how well that's going to show up on the video, but we are just kind of towards the top of the minimum mark there, so we definitely want to put a little bit more in. So that's pretty much exactly where we kind of expected to be, really. So obviously we want to put a little bit more in, so I'm going to probably put close to another half a litre in there. So the key is when you're topping up to try and get to a level is to always try and underfill it. If you put too much in, it's really hard to get it back out, whereas if you don't put enough in, it's very easy to put a bit more in. So I know I'm going to put about a half a litre in, so I'm going to approximate that, and I'm going to go just a little bit underneath that. And then I'm going to again give that about a minute or so just to drip down into the sump. If you do it straight away, you won't get an accurate reading. Just leave that for about a minute or so. Take the reading again, and we're going to go up the dipstick. And obviously, once you want to get that to the ideal spot on that dipstick, and just keep topping it up bit by bit until you get to the perfect level. Okay, so there's our level. You can see we've just brought him up just at the tip of my finger, just there is the mark where it is, and I only put that in probably 1 minute ago, so if I left that a few minutes, that's going to go up a tiny little bit as the rest of that oil drips down into the sump. So that's a good level there. So you can just play around with that, take as long as you need to get that level precisely where you want it. Obviously you don't want to take it into the max level, you want it somewhere in this gauge just here, and ideally you want it towards the max rather than towards the minimum. That line right there, where the kind of this bit with a pattern in the middle meets that max thing just there, that is what Audi recommend as the perfect level just there. So we're happy with the level, so we can go ahead, get rid of our funnel and pop your oil cap back on. Okay, so the location of your cabin filter. So if you go to the passenger side of the car where your glove box is located and have a look underneath the glove box, you will see a little panel, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. So next what you want to do is grab this panel and pull it down. There's a series of clips inside. Thankfully you've got these little kind of grips and holes to enable you to pull it down. But that's what you need to do, is use these holes, lever it down and unclip these clips. So here's the clips. See there's 3 dotted along the top edge just here. So next, carefully slide the rear of it out, moving the whole thing towards you. And next we've got to disconnect this little connector here for the light. There's a little tab on the end, just in there, so just push the tab down, give it a wiggle, this will come out like so, and then we can remove this panel from the car. So if you have a look underneath, you've got the housing for the filter here, and we've got these little bolts, little screws, one here and the other located tucked away just under there. So we want to get those 2 little screws there removed. So these little screws are a little bit of an awkward size. They're 5.5 millimeters. Now if you don't have a 5.5 millimeter bit, you can also use a 7/32 of an inch. So now we can reach up and remove this little panel. You may find the filter's a little bit stuck in. If it is, you might have to get a screwdriver under the edge just to get you started. And what you'll find is the filter as it drops down will get stuck just on the edge of this plastic panel here. So what you'll have to do is kind of flex this plastic panel forward as you also manipulate the cabin filter in the opposite direction, and by doing the 2 you should be able to slide this down out of the way. And once you drop yours down, don't take it out straight away, just take a quick note on the bottom usually, where you've got all of your part numbers, you often have, you probably won't be able to see it on the video, but you'll see on the new filter in a second, it's got a little thing here that says airflow and a little arrow pointing downwards. So obviously it came out from this direction, so that airflow arrow is effectively pointing back towards the engine. And one thing to be careful of when you are removing and also refitting your new filter is there's actually this little seal just here, a rubber kind of a foam seal that sits in around the edge to make sure you get an airtight seal. And you want to make sure that when this drops down, you don't pull this out, and likewise when you push it back in, that this doesn't pop out. So just keep an eye on that and make sure that that's properly inserted all the way across. And once you've pushed it up, what you can do is you can actually push it in a little bit further, and you can actually double check that seal that we just mentioned before. So we're now ready to refit the cover. Before you do so, just make sure that the foam here is all seated correctly to ensure that you get an airtight seal once this is put back into location. One thing to note, on the back here you have this little angled section, and it has these three little tabs, and they actually locate into 3 slots up just under the filter there. So you've got to make sure that these seat correctly when you pass it up, and try and lock this into place. And then, holding your cover in place, you need to put your 2 screws back in. And just tighten them up nice and snug, don't over tighten them, it's only plastic. So now we're ready to put our under panel back into place. Before we do so, it's worth having a quick look at it, and the things that you're trying to align at the back, because the back's kind of the harder side to get in. And what you've got at the back here, you've got these 2 kind of plastic lugs. There's one right here, and there's another just on the other side here, and those fit into 2 kind of square sockets up underneath the dashboard there. So when you come to align it, these are what you need to align. And obviously before we do that, we need to get this reconnected before we can slot this back in. So if your electrical connection just pushes straight back in, make sure it clicks. And as you go back in, remember trying to locate these tabs into these square holes. And once you're happy with that, if you're unsure whether they're in, this one's quite easy to see, the other one's a little bit harder. If you push down, you can kind of feel whether it's in or not. That one definitely is, so I'm happy with that. So now we can close this up. So just get it aligned, and then these just push in. So once you've done the service, you change your oil and your filters, etc., and you're happy, obviously we need to reset the service indicator on the car so it doesn't keep coming up with the notice that the service is due. So let's look at that next. Okay, so working with the MMI system, what we have here is the dial. That's how you move around the menus, and then once you've found what you want to select, you simply press the center of the button. That's effectively enter. In addition to that, it's also worth noting you have these 4 buttons dotted around the outside, sometimes called the shoulder buttons, and each one of these references one of the 4 corners of the screen. So you want to put the key into the car, switch the ignition on, 1 click to the right. You don't necessarily have to start the engine if you don't want to. So first of all, press the car button. So next, scroll along to servicing and checks. Scroll down to service intervals. Then scroll down and you'll see the reset oil change interval option. Click enter. Are you sure? Scroll up to yes, click enter. The oil change interval has been reset. As you can see, it's now completely reset and good to go. I hope this video has been helpful for you. If it has, can you please do us a quick favour in return? Always be sure to hit that like button for us, and if you could hit subscribe, it really does help our channel out. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel or our website, totaltechnik.com, where we have literally hundreds more Audi videos waiting for you to check out. Thanks guys, we'll see you again.